I still remember the smell of gasoline and sea salt that hung in the air of Naples that summer. The city was a beast that never slept, its veins pulsing with money, fear, and ambition. I was 28 then, old enough to understand how the world worked, but still young enough to believe I could bend it to my will. My name is Marco Conti, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I controlled. Back then, Luca and I were small-time operators in a big-time city. We grew up together on the same cracked streets near the port, sons of mechanics and fishermen who believed that honest work could still buy dignity. But the 90s weren't built for honesty. Not in Naples. Money flowed through the city like a river of oil, thick, dark, and flammable. And Luca had a gift for finding its source. He was the brain between us, the one who saw opportunity where others saw danger. I was the muscle, the one who knew how to make things happen when talk wasn't enough. Together, we ran errands for men who never gave their real names. At first, it was small packages, cash deliveries, stolen car parts. But once you touch easy money, it burns into your skin. You can't wash it off. The job that changed everything came on a night when the rain didn't stop for hours. The streets looked like mirrors, reflecting the city's neon scars. Luca showed up at my place, soaked, a cigarette stuck to his lip. He told me about a transport deal, a truck loaded with unregistered weapons, heading from Palermo to Naples. The shipment was meant for one of the big families, but the driver could be bought. We just needed to intercept it. The payout would set us up for life. I didn't hesitate. We'd been scraping by for too long. We planned the job like soldiers going to war, routes, timing, backup plans. Everything seemed airtight. But in this line of work, the moment you think you're untouchable, fate reminds you that it doesn't owe you a damn thing. We took the truck outside Salerno, just before dawn. The fog was thick, swallowing the road ahead. I still remember the sound of the diesel engine as it idled under the overpass, the taste of adrenaline in my mouth. The driver handed it over without a fight. He looked scared, too scared. That should have been my first warning. By the time we reached the city, the cops were already on our tail. What followed was chaos. Flashing lights, sirens, the kind of noise that drowns out thought. Luca drove like a madman through the backstreets while I threw the crates into an abandoned warehouse near the docks. We escaped by inches, but that night something shifted between us. Fear has a way of showing you who people really are. In the days that followed, we laid low. The city was tense. Word on the street was that someone had stolen from the Romano family, one of the oldest and most ruthless syndicates in southern Italy. They were hunting for the thieves. Everyone knew it wasn't about the money. It was about pride. I knew Luca had made a mistake, but when I asked him who the buyer was, he brushed it off. A friend, he said. A friend we never met. Weeks passed. I spent most nights in the same bar near the marina, watching the ships come and go. The horizon was my only escape. Luca, meanwhile, was busy counting money and making calls. He was restless, obsessed with growing bigger, faster. I could feel the storm coming, but I didn't know from which direction. Then came the night that tore it all apart. It was late October. The air smelled like rain again. Luca asked me to meet him at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, the same one where we'd stashed the weapons. He sounded nervous, different. When I arrived, the place was dark, except for the flickering of a single bulb. I found him standing there, pale, a gun on the table between us. He told me the buyer had fallen through, that the Romanos knew our names, that someone had talked. I looked at him and saw something in his eyes. Guilt. I realized then that the driver hadn't been scared of us that night in Salerno. He'd been scared for us. The entire job had been a setup. I wanted to believe Luca hadn't known, but deep down, I knew he had. He thought he could outsmart the Romanos, play both sides. But you can't cheat men who've built empires on betrayal. They always have one last move. We didn't even hear them coming. 3 cars pulled up outside. Doors slammed. Boots echoed. I grabbed the gun from the table and shouted for Luca to move, but he froze like a man already dead. The first shots tore through the windows, glass exploding into dust. I dropped to the floor and fired back blindly, the noise deafening in the hollow room. When the gunfire stopped, there was silence, thick, ringing silence. I crawled toward Luca, but he was already gone. A single shot had found him. His blood mixed with the rainwater pooling on the floor, turning it dark and oily like the streets we'd grown up on. I didn't stay to mourn. I ran. That night, I disappeared from Naples. I drove north, changing cars, names, faces. Every highway felt like a confession. I told myself I was running from the Romanos, but the truth is, I was running from myself, from what I'd allowed to happen. Years passed. I ended up in Milan, working in a garage under a fake name. Every day felt borrowed. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of someone in the crowd, a face that reminded me of Luca, and my heart would skip. The past doesn't die. It waits. It lingers in the reflection of a rain-soaked street, in the rumble of a passing car, in the smell of gasoline that never truly fades. One night, a man came into the garage. Well-dressed, silent, the kind of man who doesn't ask questions because he already knows the answers. He handed me an envelope and walked away. Inside was a photograph, me and Luca, taken years ago, leaning against that same truck outside Salerno. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were the words, "You can't outrun blood." I didn't sleep that night. The city outside felt too quiet. I sat in the dark, cigarette smoke curling through the air, and thought about fate. Maybe we never really choose our paths. Maybe they're carved into us from the start. In the streets we grow up on, in the hands we shake, in the promises we break. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I packed my things, took the photograph, and drove south. The roads looked the same as they did years ago. Cracked, restless, haunted. When I reached Naples, the sun was setting behind the port, painting everything in gold and rust. I parked near the old warehouse. It was still standing, though barely. The ghosts hadn't left. I walked inside and felt the air shift. Dust floated through the slanted light. I stood in the same spot where Luca had fallen. Time had erased the blood, but not the weight of it. I realized then that I hadn't come back for revenge. I come to finish the story. As night fell, I left the warehouse and drove toward the edge of the city, where the sea met the asphalt. I stopped, stepped out, and watched the waves crash against the shore. The same sea that had once promised escape now felt like a mirror. Cold, endless, honest. I lit a cigarette and thought about Luca, about the boy who once dreamed of owning a car shop, who believed we could build a life out of the rubble, about how ambition can turn loyalty into greed, and friendship into a grave. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I used to think that was just a saying. Now I know it's true, and that the asphalt under my feet was laid by our own hands. As I stood there, the wind carrying the scent of salt and smoke, I heard the faint hum of engines behind me. 3 cars, maybe 4. I didn't turn around. I just smiled. Some debts aren't meant to be paid in money. When the headlights washed over me, I closed my eyes and remembered the way Luca used to laugh, reckless and alive. In that moment I wasn't afraid anymore, because the truth is, I died that night in Salerno. Everything since then has just been noise. And as the roar of the engines grew louder, I finally understood what the city had been trying to tell me all along. That no man escapes his own story. Not in Naples. Not in this life. Only in the silence that follows.